Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel for another painting tutorial. If you're new, I'm Joni and thanks so much for joining me today. I'm going to show you all step by step how to paint Late for the Ball. So this is going to be a winter and Christmas ball and I can't wait to show you step by step how to do this just using a few colors and brushes. I'll have a full list of the colors and the brushes, the canvas, and some links below this video in the description box. There's a little arrow right here on the right side under the video. Just click that and it'll pop up for you. Let's go over the colors I'm using today. I've got Mars Black, Sap Green, Titanium White I'll be using for the trees, and then I've got some Phthalo Green, some more white here for her dress, and I've got a little bit of a warm luminous yellow that I'm going to be using for some soft lights, maybe some twinkling lights in the distance, with a little castle in the distance where she's rushing off to get to. And the canvas I'm using today is a 16 by 20 stretched and primed canvas. I haven't done anything to it. It's already prepped, and I just unwrapped it right from the store when I brought it home and placed it here on the easel. So you don't need to do anything to it if you're using a professional grade canvas. If you have a lower grade canvas, then you may want to apply a few coats of gesso and let that dry, sand if needed. Sometimes it can be a little bit rough. The brushes I've got here are this large one for blocking in the background and covering big areas. It's just a large flat brush. It's a Jumbo 70, but you can use any large brush you want. It can be a large filbert or a flat. And then I'm going to be adding some trees. So I'll be using my 30 filbert for the bigger trees, a 14 for smaller trees. And I'm also going to be using this for a little bit of her dress and the shape of her figure. And then I've got a 1-inch mop brush I'm going to be using for blending and softening the background to make it look really kind of blurry and misty and hazy like. And it's a great technique that I'm going to show you guys how to do. Very, very easy. It's another way to use a mop brush that I haven't shown you in very many videos, but I really want to start to show you guys how you can take advantage of the mop brush and get the most out of it. So going on to the next brush here, I've got a number 20 flat brush I'll be using for the castle in the distance and any lines or sort of flat areas that I need to use it for. And then I've got my number 3 round brush I'll be using for any small details in this painting. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and get started. The very first thing I'm going to do is get my canvas wet. So I'm going to take a bit of water on my big brush and I'm just going to apply a thin layer of water just to dampen the canvas a bit because it's going to really help blend my acrylics out so I'm not struggling. And if you've ever had trouble struggling to pull your acrylics around your canvas and you're wondering what you're doing wrong, it's not the canvas. Sometimes it can be the canvas, but it's usually just a little quick fix like this, adding a little bit of water. And I'm going to be taking some light gray here. I use the craft looser paints, thinner paints for covering large surfaces like underpainting. So I just had white and I added a little bit of black, just craft loose paints, mixed it up and made my own shade of gray here. It's very similar to Slate Grey. So if yours ends up being a little lighter or a little darker than this, that'll work just fine too. So I'm gonna just pour it here in my little dish and I'm gonna use the same brush. Just kind of dip it in there, doesn't really matter. And we're just gonna go around. I really love using gray, different tones of grays for underpaintings. For some reason, it just is such a nice complement to all the other colors. It helps you get a lot of mid-tones as well. So just softer tones between your brightest highlights and your darkest shadows. Okay, then I'm just going to take my brush, add a little bit of gray on there again, and I'm just going to go side to side down here. For the foreground. I'm going to take some of this white now, and I'm just going to start adding it randomly in little areas here. We're going to add lighter and darker areas. And then this is where the dry mop brush comes in. You can use this to soften these areas and make it look blurry in the background, or soften up some of those white areas to make it look like clouds. Now I'd like to show you guys another really amazing tip in a future video on how to use this technique to paint animal fur. Blend it out as much as you want. Depends on how much you want to do that and how much paint you've added. Mine's a little thick and my gray's a little bit, my canvas is a little bit wet, but I like this look, and I'm just going to take a little bit more white now, and I'm just going to kind of go around here and add little circles, blending around, leaving some spaces. I'm just trying to create some atmosphere at this point and building up slowly the composition and the perspective. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is dry this all off, and then I'm going to start coming in with some trees and the castle. Okay, so now that it's all dry, I'm going to use my 30 filbert brush, and I'm going to add some black and some sap green and start working on some forest area and a little bit of trees more towards us in the foreground with a little bit more detail. So I'm just going to get my brush a little bit wet first, and I'm going to take some black and some green. Let me know if you guys like this new setup here rather than me holding my palette out in front of the canvas. I thought I'd try something a little different today. Okay, so you want to make sure you add enough green so that it doesn't look black. You want it to just look like a really deep dark forest green. Okay, so I'm going to start pulling. My brush isn't really wet because I want this to look frosty and snowy out. So see how we have some drier areas here and then some areas here in the front that are going to be a little bit thicker. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of white now, and I'm just going to start, I'll start by pulling a little bit here in the background. Just to make some lighter tones. And then I'll take some more white with my green and black, mix it up, and then I'll just start tapping like this. I don't want to make these too detailed because I want it to be more about her velvet, beautiful velvet dress. So I don't want to have too much competition by trying to add every single detail and full focus of the tree. So it's more building up a texture and kind of fading it out of focus slightly. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and do the same thing. Tap, 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 side to side. And then these ones here that get smaller and smaller are farther away. Okay, then I'm going to come in the front here with more white. So I'm just wiggling and kind of pushing gently here to get a little bit extra white on my brush. And I'm going to start adding a few heavier branches here. Get a little bit of white and that light green again. And just gradually add a few more. Now look at the angle that I'm holding my brush on. This also will change. It'll make it look like those branches will look like a different type of tree than a pine. And it also looks like it's weighed down by snow, and then it's also just getting narrower and narrower and helping to create that perspective. And I'm going to take some more white now, and I'm going to add it. Sometimes I like to turn my brush over like this. This is just how I like to do it with the paint on the bottom, but you can hold it however you feel comfortable. So I'm just going to start to add a little bit of snow, just little bits down here, and then have it come up higher. And then I'm going to catch the edge here and lightly pull it in to the side. This will also make it look a little blurry and help to create a little bit more atmosphere. Okay, I'm going to load my brush again, the belly down, but just loading a quarter of the way from the end of the brush. Now sometimes your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. I did switch over to my right hand. I primarily use my left hand for painting, but I'm a little ambidextrous, and sometimes if this arm's getting tired or I don't want to cover too much of what I want you guys to see by putting my hand here and painting, I'll switch to my right hand. So if you're wondering what I'm doing and why, that's the reason. Okay, so I don't know how much of this I'm going to actually cover with her dress, but I want to have this area here a little fuller. And then we're going to just come up here and sweep into this a little bit. Okay, so I think we have a pretty nice atmosphere. I want to add a little bit of a haze now before we come in with our castle. So I'm just going to imagine that this is going downhill, and she's going to go down and then have to go up. And there's a castle up here. Maybe there's a stagecoach down at the bottom that will take her up to this hill where the castle is. That would be an awful long walk for her and trek up that mountain. I'm gonna add a little bit. I'm just using what's left in my brush here. Thin amount of white. And the next brush I'm going to be using is my flat brush. So I'm going to add just a little bit of water to that. Okay, just a little bit like this. Catch any drips. And first I'm going to add a little bit of white and the warm yellow. Now you can use any shade of yellow or orange. This is one of my favorite shades though. So the reason why I'm adding this first, this is the inside of the windows, the light. I'm adding this first because it's easier to cut in and around than sometimes to go back in. You can do it either way though, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. So I'm just going to, all we're going to do is paint lines, and some thicker, some thinner, and then we'll add those little triangle turrets on the top of them. So I'm just going to pull different heights. And get a little bit more paint on my brush here. Okay, so you can come in, make them a little thicker, add some thinner ones. And then maybe coming down the hill, there's some little lights, light the way. Just dabbing. Okay, I'm gonna add some more. Then I'm going to make them thinner on the top just by turning my brush like this and sliding my brush just to make these little lines. It's super easy. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is come in with some white and black. Same brush. I'm going to add a little bit more black to make a darker gray than the original base coat of gray that we added. And I'll start to come in, slide my brush, making thicker areas. Dabs. So we want to have those windows, right? And we want to have some shadows. We go up and then arch and then right back down, just for painting simple archways. And I'm going to take black clean brush. Just really want to have a line of black here. Now you can start to make little triangles with this brush too, or you can use a smaller brush. Just tap on an angle, pointier at the top, narrower. And then I'm just going to come underneath here and add a little bit of black, thin amount of black. I'm going to use my filbert brush, dry, some green and some white. And I'm just going to start to tap and see how I've got it turned, holding it on this side like this. Just make it look like some trees. So it is nighttime, so we don't want to make the trees too bright. That's why I did the darker base. I'm going to use my round brush now, and I'm going to add a little bit of black and white, make a dark gray. And I'm going to add a little loop like this, a little arch that goes down on either side. And I'm going to add a few more here, different heights, so that it makes it look, you know, all of it will look a little bit more interesting if you have lower and higher areas. But it's your castle, so you can, this is just how I do it, but you can follow along with me, or you can take it in another direction. So we'll just one little triangle at a time. And then add some more windows. We'll just cut around where we have that soft yellow. And then I like to add little lines that start on an angle here, because we have to go with that rounded arch, and then straight down in the center, and then a little diagonal on the right and the left side. Okay, I'll just add a few more here, gradually making them taller. Then I'm going to add a little bit of white. This will be a little highlight, but also a little bit of snow. just over those little arches, and then a little bit on the left side. Maybe a few little lines for some stairs. And then I'll add a little bit of yellow and white for some more lights. And I'm just going to come in now with a clean brush of no black or gray, just a little bit of that yellow and white. I think it would be nice to add a little flag, so I just took a little dab of white and black, and we'll come in the center here and bring this up higher, a little skinny line, and then I'm gonna push gently and then wiggle, push gently, wiggle, wiggle for a flag. Just gonna outline this archway right here. First on either side, and then just under where we added the white. And then in between the pillars here. And then a little bit on the right side. So for a figure, I'm going to be using my filbert brush. Feel free to use whatever brush you want. You can use one a little smaller if you like. And I'm going to have her more so on this side so we can see a little bit more of this area here. And I'm going to take just a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm going to start with a little bit of black or dark, dark gray. And I'm just going to add her head right about here. So just lightly push with a filbert brush. And I'm going to take a little bit of white, and I go from the center base of her neck, scoop, turn and scoop, for her shoulders, then we're going to come in for her back area here. Bring her arm down, pull that in, more like a V. I'm going to add a little bit of warm yellow. Make the base of her neck a little wider now. We'll have her elbow right here, so we'll just little dab like this, turning your brush this way. And on this side too, so she's going to be holding her dress while she's running down the snowy path. With my round brush, I'm going to scoop up a little bit of that warm yellow, and I'm going to add her ears, a little bit of her hairline, neck there, her ears right like this. Make this a little bit brighter. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of black with my yellow and my white. I'm going to add a little dip in the spine of her back here. A little bit more black. From the shadow. There's a shadow here on either side of her rib cage and waist from her dress. Then she's going to have a ruffle here over her, the strap of her dress and shoulder, but it gets darker right in here. Just do a little loop under her where her elbow is. And then slight little scoop there. And then a little dab for her elbow. Use a little bit extra black right in here. Make that a little bit wider. We don't want to make her too skinny. I'm going to add a little dab of white in her hair up here on the top. So this looks like she's got a pretty bun. Okay, I'm going to come in with a little bit more black now. I just took a minute to dry this off. And just bring her hairline down a little bit lower here. And then we're going to add two little skinny lines of black and then a little ball of white for her earrings. Clean brush, some more warm yellow and white. And I'm just going to make these areas, her shoulder, brighter. And just on the inside here of her arms. And then get a little bit more, just a tiny bit of gray here. Tap on an angle, like diagonal right in here. A light, very faint light gray scoop on either side for her shoulder blades and then her spine. And I'm just going to come in here with a little bit more black again. I'm going to go back over to my filbert brush. And I'm going to take the fun part now, adding her velvet, green velvet dress, my Thalo Green. And I'm going to come down on an angle on either side. And then pull straight across. Now we're not going to see her hands. They're in the front and in the fabric of her dress. So we're just going to start on the shape of the dress, and it's going to come down and just start to bell out. And then we're going to just do these little round loops and then bring it in. I want to exaggerate it here on the right side. So we'll have it come out just off the canvas, a little bit right here. Okay, and then I'm going to fill it all in with green. And then we'll come in with white. And make all those velvet folds stand out. So with a round brush, I'm going to take the green. Just going to pull this in. And just add a bunch of like bow shapes. I'm going to add some to her hair as well. And a little bit of white in here so it picks up some of that green. And we're just going to add some little loops and lines. So loop, some lines, just so that you don't cover up. You don't want to make it all one color. You want it to be light and dark areas, so you have the folds in there and highlights and shadows. Then I'll come in from this side here. Pick up a little bit more green and make this a little thicker. Some lines. Okay, I'm going to rinse that brush out and go back over to the filbert, add some white. I'm going to add just a little bit of water to my brush to make it a bit runnier and easier to work with. So we're going to go down and like make a bunch of scoops that are kind of in a V. And then we're going to start to add some lines and twist and roll our brush around to create those folds. It helps to have the paint on the very end of your brush. And then where you want the folds to stick out, you're going to add extra white. That's going to give you the depth in the fabric. I'm just rinsing my brush out because it's starting to build up too much with paint, and I don't want it to dry when it gets close to the ferrule. So I just remember to rinse your brushes out from time to time. Just going to kind of twist around like this. And then with a liner brush, after you do that little twist, you can add a few lines. I'm going to add a few little dabs for buttons here. We're going to get really close to the waist there and leave just this tiniest amount of a black line before we start coming down into these ruffles. And I'm going to create some little scoops here where the fabric's kind of bunched up and she's picking it up. And then you can do the same thing for a little bit more depth if you feel like you don't have enough. For some really dark areas, just come around your brightest ones with straight phthalo green. I'll add a little bit more of the green, just right in these areas here. Okay, back over to my filbert brush. Add a little bit of warm yellow here to her arms. I'm going to add some velvet gloves on her. I'm going to add them right from her, just below her elbow, and add the green. I think that would look really pretty. There, I think I like that better. And now I'm going to take a little bit of white, and to make it look like the folds, like there's little folds, we're just going to do little lines, kind of zigzag. And just keep going, building up those layers. Using a little bit more white sometimes for brighter areas. So wherever you have an arch in your ruffles like that, that's where the fabric is going to stick out the most and catch the light and be the brightest. And the more lines that you add, light and dark, the more fabric and ruffles you create. So you decide what type of dress you want yours to be. Notice I'm leaving a dark area. When I add my highlights, I'm starting from the ruffle and then it gets thinner, and I don't bring it all the way up. For instance, right here, we'll just bring a little loop over here, and then I'm going to go pull up, but not into the shadows, the darker folds. I'm going to come in here with green now. Just going to add a little bit more, just a little bit more white in here now. I want to make sure I've got some white, minty shades and the dark green. Now, if you guys like to paint fabric, I've got a playlist of figures and portraits where you can find more videos like these. Now I'm going to take just a little bit of black and add some extra dark layers in here for shadows. This will make the phthalo green pop out a little bit more too. Okay, now I'm going to just use my filbert brush again and add a shadow down here. So I'm going to take a little bit of black, a little bit of white, make a darker gray than the gray that we have here. Okay, so I'm just going to go underneath her dress. Take a little bit extra black just to catch right at the base of her dress where it's going to be the darkest. And then the white. To soften a little bit. As that shadow gets a little farther out. And just redefine the black at the base of her dress again to really make this look more 3D. Okay, now I'm going to come in and add a thin haze, thin amount of white, kind of dry brush, watered down. It's kind of like You want to water the paint down to thin it out, but then you want to take most of the paint off your brush. So I'm just going to add a little bit here. Okay, I'll add just a little bit more. Take my larger filbert brush here and just blend some of it off. And I think it would also be kind of nice to add a little lamp post down here too, so she doesn't look like she's kind of going into a dark, lonely area. I want to have a little bit of light here. So I'm gonna just start with my round brush, white and yellow. And I'll add a little dab for a lantern there. And then I think I'll just add another little one right here. And I think I'll add a little glow of light coming from this castle. And another one down there. I'm going to soften with my damp filbert brush. A little bit of water in there. Okay, so we have the light inside our lamppost. I'm going to take a clean brush with some black, a line that goes in almost to a V, and then we'll add a little line below it, a little bit wider. We'll bring it down and let it just kind of disappear into the snow. Add a line across the top that's wider than the lampshade inside. And then a little triangle on the top of that, and a dab on the top. Now we'll do the same thing, just smaller, thinner, and less pressure. Okay, I think I want to add another one right here. So I'm going to start off with clean brush with a yellow and white again. And I think I'm going to add it right here. We'll have a nice big lamp post. So it's wider on the top, and then it comes in and is narrower right here. Take a little bit more yellow. Now that I'll have to dry off after and go over with another layer. But I'm going to come in with some black now, and I'm going to use my flat brush. Wiggle just to load the end of the brush. I'm going to go slightly past, making it wider, that line wider than the lamp inside, the light area. Add a little triangle inside here. And then a little dab on top of that. Tap for a line. And that's about as thick as we want it to be. So go right down. I'm going to add another line, skinny line that comes out right there. Back over to my round brush. I'm going to bring that up a little taller, paint it in. Add a little ball on the top. And then a little diamond shape. A faint line on those ones as well. And this has snow covering it too. I'm going to add some fresh snow. I'm going to add my white tinted with a little bit of that yellow for the snow down here. And then just slightly pull a little bit going up the base of that lamppost. And then we'll add some light down there. Where we have a lamppost, we're going to have that light reflecting. Add a little bit mistiness over these trees here. I'm going to go over the side of this dress to make it look like got a few more little ripples and ruffles. I want to go inside here now and add that other layer of white and yellow, make it brighter. And then I'll come in with some black. We'll add 2 lines. I'm just going to add a little bit more fabric that comes in from here. So a dab of white and green. And catch her glove right there. and then add a little bit more green inside. Going to add a little bit more snow, so I'll take some white in here, and I'm just going to add a little dab like this. Dry brush. I'm going to add a little bit more black right here. See how it kind of goes, arches over? So I'm going to do the same thing on that side. And then I'm going to add a Christmas wreath right here. I'm going to start with some black and green and my filbert brush. And just tap a circle on there, tapping so that you get the texture. And then I'll take a little bit of white with the green. Over to my round brush. I'm going to take yellow and white, a little ball on the end. Take a little bit more of the green with the white. And then a little bit more white for little bits of snow collecting. I'm going to add a little one down here as well. Just using a little bit of green and then a little bit of white. I'm going to come around the edge here with a little bit of black and green just so that I'm sort of tapping in to outline it so that it shows up against this light background that was kind of starting to, it was getting lost in it. It was like camouflaged. Same with this side just a little bit. I'm going to add a little ribbon there to make this wreath, it just looks incomplete, like it's missing something, doesn't it? So I want to add, I'm using some Naphthalene Crimson, but you can use any red that you want. Just going to take a little bit here. And I'm going to add a bow, so just gently pushing, making it a little wider on one side. And then a little dab for the middle, and then wiggle, wiggle, let off. There, that looks a little more Christmassy. Okay, and a little dab for those ones down there. Okay, then I'll take a little bit of white and a little bit of that white and yellow. Add a bit of that inside. And though this is far away, I want to add a couple little lines here, faint little lines on the lamppost. Can use a little bit of black and add a little loop, a flat little loop right there. One on the top and then one on the bottom. So the top of this part of the bow and the bottom of that one. Mix up a little bit of that red, white, and yellow. Add it to her back a little bit here. And then a little bit of white right in here. I'm going to make some more gray. And add a little bit more to her spine here. And I'll just finish this painting off, adding a little bit more black under her dress. I want to thank you guys so much for sticking around, watching, and painting with me. Take care, everybody. I wish you all the best for the new year. Thanks so much for all of your support, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye!